Is it popping up on all the mediums?
Yayvilles. We've got a start on one of them.
I think we should have an over-under. How many comments on my shoes today? I'm gonna say 2. I'm gonna say 2.
I think they're a little spicy today. So
should I go 3?
I'm going 5.
Okay, so all right, let's go 3. I'll go over under 3. If it's 2, you owe me $5, 2 or less, or 0, right?
Perfect.
Then you owe me 5. If it's 4 or above.
4 or above.
Okay.
So that's a 3.5.
3.5. If there's even a touch. Ooh, outfit. That doesn't count. You got to talk shoes.
Got to talk shoes.
All righty. So, give it a few minutes for folks to come in.
Yes, sir.
Welcome in. We looking good. Everything's live and rocking. We're on our own today. We don't have our man Philip behind the scenes, so it's us 2 dorks, but at least Jackson's here, and he's pretty techie. I am not.
Pretty techie is an
more
overstatement compared to you.
More techie than me. More techie than I. All right, Jack, what's the shot here, homie?
What club you got?
I got 7.
182 with a little pull fade.
182 pull fade. Let's see. What do you think the AOA was?
5.5.
Nope, 8.3.
Ooh.
That was 188. Spin axis 3 right. I block cut it. Push 1.5.
Ah.
Okay. Sucked.
Up and down.
Okay, here we go. What's the next one?
195 block draw.
Oh my gosh. Okay, get up and get it. That's like 2 bills, I think.
It's just munched.
That was just rope housed. AOA 4. Interesting, huh?
Ooh. Get a little
swing speed 93.3. 197.
Nice.
Not bad. Push 2.8. Spin axis 2.7 left.
That ball's coming right
that's
back
nice.
to the middle.
I take Barty's, all day, Mike.
I think that's nice.
Okay. So I think today, we good. By the way, everything looks nice. Everything's live, kind of rocking.
YouTube is going.
Cool.
Waiting for X Factor to pop up on Instagram, but I think we can get cooking.
Cooking? Okay.
I think so.
We'll get crank-a-lankin'. So obviously, the point of these videos is a live Q&A for me to hop in here and answer a heck of a lot of questions that folks have, which is absolutely a blast. But what I would also like to cover a little bit, I want to take the reins some today, and talk a little bit about how this all goes. I mean, we hear a ton, right, Jay, where it's trust the process and you work on your golf swing. That's kind of like where people hide out. And I think a lot of folks that watch our stuff, they're intrigued about the golf swing. And so they just focus on golf swing. And if you do that, there's a danger in it, in that you lose track of what the golf ball is doing, like your command of the ball. And at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're classifying great golf swings as the player's ability to command the golf ball. So like every single player on the PGA Tour, fantastic golf swing, right? Interesting thing is you have all these different types of maps of movement out there. I mean, look at the difference of Scotty Scheffler versus Neiman, crazy different. So, and again, I'm not here to say that a golf swing is bad out there. I mean, they're all freaking fantastic. Do we have preferences? Yes,
absolutely.
Of course we do. For a lot of different reasons, but at the end of the day, what they've got, great players have a map, a process in their golf swing. Of course, Scotty works on his golf swing, same with Neiman. I guarantee that they're working on different things because their matchups are different, but what they're doing is they're taking that map and they're able to control the golf ball with it. So when we're starting today and playing little call shots, and Jackson's going, hey, Riley, 197 little push draw, or 188 little pull cut, all that we're doing is we're modifying one map here, okay? And so when you're working on your action, what we would like to see is, in general, a super stable body. So my ribs, my spine, my pelvis, my foot action, my legs, like all of this is very much a constant. We'll also have a constant in backswing, and generally in elite language, like the backswing is from like P1 address into about P2, maybe P2 and a half, and we're done with backswing. Because the arms haven't lifted at all here. All I've done is like spiral, 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 some rotation here, and leverage the hands. So this is backswing. Now, this is the start of transition, and there's almost like two phases of transition, right? There's phase one, which is me lifting and adducting this lead arm as I continue to turn and drop to get to the top here. And then phase two now is where I start to rotate, a little pelvic swivel here, and I'm organizing and sliding the golf club. So the golf club's working down this coronal plane as I'm rotating and staying dropped in with the pelvis. Now, this is where we start to play around with shots here. Okay, so if I'm looking to start the golf ball right compared to starting the golf ball left, it's how I'm slotting this golf club in this like delivery position, somewhere around P5-ish. Okay, so setup, constant. So to hit a draw, we're not doing this. To hit a fade, we're not doing this. We're still aimed at the target that we would like the golf ball to start or land at. Now I'm going constant, constant. Now, for a ball that starts right, I need the club deeper. See how the club head compared to the handle? The club's way back here, so think about the path that the golf club's going to have from back there to get into the ball. So as I keep motoring through the shot in the same way I would in a stock shot, I'm just going chest through. There's the unload of the club. Look at where that golf ball is going to start. So a little block draw is here to there. So you can see that that golf ball starts out to the right, and a lot of that is just because I've organized the golf club deeper here. This hasn't changed much. And like the numbers here, ball is a push of 5 degrees with a spin axis of 1.2 left. Little block, little draw. Now if I wanted to cut it, same stuff, constant. I'm going constant setup, constant backswing, constant transition one. Now as I do the same thing in my body, woo, look at where that club is. So think about the path from where the club head is now to get into the ball as I keep motoring through. So it's just a bit different in that phase. So now you can see where that golf ball is going to start. So we've got ball that starts, come on, 2.7 left with a spin axis of 1.6 right. So that's a little pull cut compared to a little block draw. But now we're commanding the golf ball. If you have both of those shots, man, you always know how to like stay in neutral. It's always like scary to us when somebody comes in and goes, hey, I just want to hit cuts only. I never want to see another draw in my life. And I'm like, ugh. Because man, that's like, you can hit 40-yard white cuts and you're like, yeah. But if you hit a 1-yard thumpy draw, that violates that law. So you want to be able to like manage both. When you play, you might lean into one ball flight or the other just based on your own kind of fingerprinting and DNA. But you always want, like once you get a system where, man, I'm like organizing the club with my body, got good woos, rhythm's nice, like blah, blah, blah. You want to be able to use that system and command the ball through the system. So notice how I'm moving. I have an absolute picture of how I'm going to move there. I'm adjusting just where this golf club is slotting in that P5 phase, and then I can manage the hit and own the golf ball better. And it becomes one thing, your golf swing and your ball flight. With that being said, should we open it up?
Let's open it up.
Let's open it up. What question you got that's like ringing in your ears there, J-Bone?
I like this one from Anthony and Gotti from X Factor. Is there an optimal point in which you drop and transition in the downswing? The transition starts with the club shallowing, followed by the rotation. Please demonstrate the timing as it relates to club position.
Great. So, yes, we'll do this. Change out some clubs here. So, here's kind of the idea here is the shapes are a bit different, but the overall outlook is very, very much the same here. Okay, so let's say I have a wedge, and I'm going to set up to a wedge, and I'm right in here. But just a wedge, this looks reasonable when I set up to it. But think about if I had a golf club here that was much longer. Look how unreasonable this is. Okay, so the shape of the club would make me more in here. Okay, this looks reasonable with the 3-wood. Looks completely unreasonable with a wedge all of a sudden. Okay, so the reason it doesn't just eye test look right is because what I'm looking to do in like this early hip hinge to get into posture, I'm almost looking to, if I'm right here, let's say, okay, ball's like right underneath me, I need more flexion here so I can be more over the top of it, and you can see how much it looks like this is trying to own that. The object that I'm looking to hit and put pressure on, this is organized to it, okay? If I'm back here, I wouldn't be here, because now it doesn't look like I'm getting ready to own this. I'm owning this space, not that object. So this needs to be, whoa, now it looks reasonable. My chest or my trunk, relative to the object that I'm looking to hit, need to match, okay? So if we start with wedge, what we're looking to do in this transitionary phase, okay? So we've already touched a little bit on like transition 1 compared to transition 2. So transition 1, the elements from right here in backswing, like first off, backswing is like a little bitty turn, a little hand leverage, but see how the arms haven't lifted? Now, 3 things are going to happen simultaneously. This lead arm is going to adduct and go into some amount of shoulder flexion while I keep turning and I drop my pelvis. Okay, so I'm going here. Lead arm, continued rotation, pelvic drop. Boom. That's transition 1. Transition 2 is a little bit of pelvic swivel here. Okay, I've got my chest starting to like continue to swivel forward because I'm starting to rotate in here. I'm rotating in here. Both pelvis and chest are in here. Let's see my trunk now. Moving this forward, so now I own the bottom out, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's all transition 2 stuff. Backswing, transition 1. I'm swivel here, but now, see how the golf club, it wants to pitch over when I do this because I have all this rotation in my pelvis and all this rotation in my rib cage. So I need to slot the golf club out. This is this coronal plane hit that we're talking a lot about. Boom. Now, at about P5, roughly, is the fully loaded phase, or excuse me, fully loaded area. Okay, I'm in there. I've loaded everything from P1 all the way to P5. Backswing, transition 1, transition 2. Super organized map if you can do that. Now what you're looking to do is, so once I'm in here, I am organizing the club, and as I swivel in here, see how my chest generally gets organized to the object that I'm looking to hit, meaning I have the amount of sit, hip flexion in here, so my chest is here, so it looks like I own this space. That's why if we have all this extension here, look at what it does to my trunk. Now I own this space, so my arms have to run down. Totally different hit compared to if I'm dropped in, own this space, club is relatively, generally, running through my rib cage or right through my trunk, kind of perpendicular. Now it's so much easier to run this golf club out of my chest. So if you can think of this like pretty easy as like the transverse plane is this plane that would saw me in half from top to bottom. Okay, now we have all these different transverse planes. It could be here, it could be here, it can be anywhere, just an infinite amount of them. The transverse plane that I'm talking about is pretty much right through the lower ribs, cutting right through the lower ribs here. All right, so if I'm set up, transverse plane right now, it's kind of pointing out in this space in here. So when I drop, a lot of the key for the drop is getting that transverse plane angled more to where the golf ball is. See how it's here? So at the same time, when I'm organizing the club relative to that trunk, the club is more or less sitting right on that transverse plane. You can see where the transverse plane is pointing. So now if I just run these arms out, boom, boom, I own this space. See how it just shoots right out of my trunk here. And what's cool with that, so if I'm in here and I go boom, just running these arms out of my trunk, it almost looks like I'm stopping my body, but I still have loads of face stability. Or if I'm in here and I just turn, I still have tons of face stability. If I do both, I have loads of face stability. So you're always always managing the club face in that type of map. No matter if you're hitting early or if you're hitting late, you still own the face, which is, I mean, shoot, Jackson, in my opinion, like that's number one thing to own if you're going to own the golf ball. Like if you have the face doing this through the strike, you can hit it all over the place. And how are you ever going to gain any confidence within that map? So hopefully that generally organizes like why we're dropping, how the club is slotting, all of that based on the club's shape. So I did the same thing here with 3-wood. Okay, so I'm here, backswing, transition 1, transition 2. So see the transverse plane? See where the club's organized? So if I just shoot this out, boom, right on that transverse plane, look at that club face stability. If I'm right in here and I just turn, look at that club face stability. You're always going to be stable in that map as long as you maintain and manage that transverse plane and the hit is out of your chest, perpendicular to your trunk on that transverse plane. Yay. Okay, big explanation.
Yes, sir.
Starting out with the bang.
Bang, bang, bang. Let's see, this one is from Peter Valgaroso. Sorry if I butchered that.
Peter. What's up, Pete?
It has to do with early wrist set in the takeaway, hand path and club path in the backswing. That leads to a good depth at P4. Would love your take on common errors that you see and an optimal map to get there.
Beautiful. Okay, so loading the hands early compared to loading the hands late, my preference is to get it done early, because what we'll see if we have this like late load is a lot of players will like to pull this down in order to like leverage the golf club. And so now look at the direction of force in the handle in my arm. See all this like downward. So instead, if I can, again, start to turn in here early, and now from here almost feel like I have this pressure out of my chest, like on my sagittal plane that I've just turned over here. Here's my midline now. So with my trail hand, if I throw a little bit of extension there, boom, I've got this set, like, with that extension look, one, you'll strengthen the face, which typically I have a preference on strength of face there as well. Like for most players, if we're kind of high speed at all, like anything above like 155 ball speed with driver, 160 ball speed with driver, that's pretty bootied. So we want a stronger face so it's easier to manage that through the hit. Stronger face meaning that it's a little bit more shut. So again, if I go turn, 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 leverage here, I have this like nice strong look here, the face is nice and strong, and I've got it set. And the arms are still down. See how there's no arm lift yet? This lead arm hasn't lifted. So I'm going bump, backswing. Now I can go ahead and work it up to the top. Now, what I would suggest, like on that note, you can do it one of two different ways. And for especially like the younger kids in the academy that we coach, female players, for the most part as well, we tend to see lower ball speeds, generally speaking. So lower ball speeds means that the ball's not in the air for as long as higher ball speeds. So if we have a club face that tumbles a bit more, meaning that the club is like rotating through here, that can be massively beneficial with this. Okay, so I'm not saying that every single player needs to shut the face down here. As a matter of fact, LPGA Tour, I don't know of one player that looks like that at the top with a nice strong face, kind of bow out here. You'll see a heck of a lot more of this with some toe droop. So we see more of a radial load, just this hinge where I'm going turn and hinge here. See how the toe and the leading edge are more vertical there compared to more of an extension look to strengthen the face. So a little different there, okay, depending on the player. All right, now those are generalities as well, so we can kind of go down that rabbit hole if we need to and answer those questions as well. But question is more like, all right, I'm setting the hands early, either in that radial or in that extension of the trail wrist. Boom, boom. Now, appropriate depth. Number one, my personal take, every coach is a little different here, but my personal take is that depth is a little bit overrated, and appropriate depth is fine, but the thing that we want to make sure that we're not allocating too much of is getting the handle and the club deep because of excess adduction here of the lead arm, meaning this lead arm's going in and through my chest, which is going to lead to a heck of a lot of scap retraction in this trail scap. And what that does, the problem with this is if I have too much of this, see how now this trail arm is pinned? This is like stuck 101. If this right arm or the handle gets too far into my trail side and working towards my posterior space, literally stuck just means that it's behind me. Now the club head can be behind, but I sure don't want this arm structure to get too far behind me. Like this I can own it through here because the arms can swing right across and through my trunk. If I do too much of this, that right arm can't swing forward anymore. So as I keep turning, there it goes and I lose the face. Problems. So appropriate depth. At the end of the day, we're going to have some amount of shoulder flexion, which is just arm lift, and some amount of adduction, which is the arm working across me, like across this midline plane over here. So if you see where this hand is, kind of right out in front of my lead thigh, if I do both of those, boom, that's a blend, and it kind of gets right out in front, in general, my trail shoulder. Now, what I should be doing is rotating, 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 and for full swings, in general, we're roughly 90 degrees of rotation. Some guys you see more, like DJ, you see like all this like crazy amount of rotation to get here. So his midline points up here, it's nutso. So the balance is the more rotation you have in your trunk and in your ribs, meaning your shoulder axis looks big here, you need less and less adduction because they don't match, right? Like part of the reason that DJ's handle or his club is high is because he can turn it all the way back there. Like DJ's in here, this looks like no depth, but if I kept turning, all of a sudden it looks reasonably deep. And I didn't do anything with the arms here. So if I don't have as much turn, I need a little bit more adduction, but I tell you what, you need to be really careful with adduction in the backswing. Really careful. There is some, but you can easily run into too much and now you're stuck and the club's behind you. Define better, the handle gets behind in this posterior space, this is stuck. This isn't stuck, see how the handle's still out in front of me? Club can be back there, there's coronal plane, boom, but I've got the arms in front, so if I turn, I'm fine. To turn here, so as this lead arm adducts and elevates, now I've got plenty of depth back in here. See where the hands are? Kind of right over the top of that right heel, but it's because of the combo of continued rotation here and the appropriate amount of flexion in the shoulder and adduction of the arm.
Blah, blah, blah.
Boom.
Love it.
Lovely.
Here's a short little one. Love this.
Okay.
Anders from X Factor is asking, what is a thumper and how do I know if I hit one? Is it flush contact with lots of shaft lean due to slower rotation and holding angles, or a flush half swing, chippy shots?
Yeah. Thumpers are all, I mean, thumpers can be 180 ball speed thumpers. Okay, defining thumper, that's hilarious. Okay, so in general, with every single athlete that I'm coaching, so let's say that I have a high-level female player. Ball speed with driver on the LPGA Tour on average somewhere between 140 and 143. So let's say I have a female player that has 140 mile an hour ball speed compared to a 180 ball speed player. Efficiency out of the golf ball is going to be two very different things there. So like on average, and you might know this, Jackson, I don't know exactly the number, but on average with driver on the PGA Tour, what is launch angle on average on the PGA Tour?
Roughly? I think it's roughly 10 to 11 degrees.
So 10 to 11 degrees. So once you get into like, and there are players out there like Rory freaking launches the heck out of it.
He's like 12, 13. DJ's even higher. DJ's like 15, 16.
Yeah, so really high launches. Now, they're somewhat outliers.
Yeah.
Okay, Jason Day launches it high. Like there's plenty of guys out there that launch it really high. Tiger used to be like super high ball as well. But what I'm preferring is I'm trying to get a player, depending on their bat speed, as low as I possibly can get them while still commanding the golf ball like appropriately when it lands, and maxing out their carry distances as well. So let's take a player again that the ball speed is 180 miles an hour, and they launch the golf ball at 14 with 3,000 RPMs, backspin. That golf ball is going to launch high, keep climbing because of that. So now the descent angle is straight down. So now it doesn't run out at all. So inefficient ball right there. Now for a 140 ball speed player, launching it at 14 with 3,000 is kind of optimal. You're right in the right area because we want that golf ball. We have enough spin on it. Like spin's going to keep the golf ball in the air. And what it'll do is like now that ball with 140 mile an hour, 14 and spinning at about 3,000, maybe just less than that, is going to apex somewhere between 90 and 100 feet, which is kind of what we're looking for almost every single player that we coach. Because it works all the way through the bag as well, right? Like if I have that player that's, you know, that's 140 ball speed, we want a higher launch 5-iron so the golf ball's descent angle into the green can hit and hold generally. With a 180 ball speed, I mean, think about the ball, like it's just gonna stay here, might be on the same general trajectory, but now like for somebody's that's ball speed is higher, it's gonna keep going, whereas this player is gonna start to apex and fall. So now it's coming in flatter where this guy's up, 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 then it apexes. Now it's, as it falls, it starts to fall more and more vertical. So the more fall time it has, like once it gets to 90-ish feet, falls more vertically or appropriately. So I can still hold greens with 5-iron, launching it low as long as the ball speed is high enough. So getting to thumpy, thumpy means that I've got the ball as low as I can get away with the player while still commanding the golf ball when it lands. And generally speaking, like about 90 feet in the air, 95 feet in the air with most full swings. Wedges, we want them down a little bit more, but like, let's say 8-iron all the way through driver, somewhere about 90, 95 as the apex for every single player that we coach. So I'm thumping it when I'm in that area. Like what we're talking about here is the efficiency of the ball dependent on the speed of the player, like depending on the ball speed. So thumpy just is that. Show me a thumper. Thumper is appropriate ball based on your DNA when it comes to ball speed. General description of what a thumper is.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Yep. Awesome. Great question.
All right. I'm going to hop. We got a couple on social media I want to get
Great.
to. This one was actually from our previous live. What is the best way to avoid across the line at the top of the backswing?
Across the line. Yeah. Super good. Number one, across the line, it depends. Like, in all honesty, guys, like Tiger 97 is one of my favorite actions ever. And a lot of it is because like almost every really high level player that I see that's like a really, really high quality ball striker, they have some quirk in there that makes them unique, where they like stand out, but it's not like they're trying to do the thing. Like Morikawa, I remember this Morikawa and DJ like TaylorMade commercial kind of thing, and they're both guys that bow it up here, and they look at each other, and DJ looks at Morikawa and he goes, "Have you ever tried to bow it?" Morikawa goes, "No, I don't even know how I do." Like it's a quirk that they have in their swing that they've kind of worked around, and it's like a really nice thing. Okay, so like if we look at this too, like Tiger 97 kind of across the line, and what he does is he like really good pelvis here, like gets into the ribs. So like this rib action is what reslots the club, so the club can easily go this way. Quirk, Daniel Berger is like crazy laid off here. Okay, nice strong face though. And what Berger does is he just lowers these arms. So both shoulders go into extension as he just turns level through the strike. Like still good right in here. Super, super high level ball striker. Both have quirks. So it's like, if I get in there and try to like make Berger more neutral at the top, it might really frick them up, right? It's like a quirk that I would like to keep. So point is, we can take some of that out, but you don't need to take a ton out. And what we're really looking for more or less is just making sure that the structuring of the arms, hands, and club is generally maintained throughout the course of your swing, especially through the hit. So when we see too much like across the line, we're destroying the arm system. And what that means is, like, I'll take the lead arm, adduct it across heavily. So immediately as soon as I do that, that makes the trail scap go into some amount of retraction. See how the elbow starts to work into my posterior space? Most of the time what guys will do is they'll turn, and the club, the handle gets inappropriately deep. Now, there's a couple different things. We'll see guys that like keep it going so it gets under the plane. Okay, and then from there, I can't lift the lead arm anymore. So what we'll end up doing is going into heavy scap elevation here. Usually we have like excess like pelvic slide. So I'm shooting this out. So I start to tilt in this space. And now all of a sudden it starts to work in here. Now, it's not every time, but we still have this like heavy adduction. I've turned, sometimes players like hinge it up so the club's not deep. But now again, same thing. See how this lead arms can continue to go in this space? Is I'm going to elevate the scap to get this up and across. So we look in here. Couple things. Always going to have quite a bit of extension here, so the face is actually pretty open. But the other thing we do is we destroy the arm structure compared to where I started. So what I would love you to do is just sense, like early in your swing, if you threw like more extension in this trail wrist, so it keeps the handle in front of you, if not move the handle more towards your lead side like early, so this kind of looks DJ-esque, and then the lead arm is the lifter. So if I lift the lead arm, look at the plane now. So one, if I turned, I'm right in here. If I'm turning and lifting the lead arm, look down what the shape of the golf club like looks like here. Now, what's nice is if I go right back here, look at the arm structure. Arm structure looks fine still. I've loaded the club so it gets over on my right side, which we want, right? But the arm structure stays out in front here. And see how the lead arm is the lifter in doing this. But again, if I go adduction, I just shut off my turn to just show this. Play with it, but you want the right amount so it doesn't completely destroy potential really good quirk in your swing that makes you a freaking good player.
Beautiful.
Beaut.
Everybody's a little different.
Everybody's a little different.
Everybody's a little
and
different.
we like different. Different's a good thing.
All
Very
right.
good thing.
Let's hop in here. Charles Hillier.
Nice.
He is asking.
What's up, Charles? You talked to, he's an Instagram guy. He's a
And
fantastic
X-Factor.
dude.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain the difference between anterior and posterior dominant swings? Maybe tips on getting, or anterior and posterior chain dominant swings.
Yep. So definitely, I absolutely prefer posterior chain. Meaning, like, when we're talking posterior chain, it's this load here where like all this tissue in my back is loading, engaged, whatever, right? Whatever we want to call it. But like, this is a posterior chain look right here. This is anterior chain where I just shoot all this out. So as soon as I go this way, all this tissue in my front elongates. And the issue with it, like we'll see this sometimes when we have players that are in way too much extension at the top, like they'll turn over here, but to get the golf club to the top, they go in this shape right here. All this spine extension leaks into pelvic extension here, and that's how they try to get the golf club to the top. So their arms don't actually lift; they just go this way to try to get that golf club up there. Now, notice what happens. Center of mass of the pelvis shoots out. Center of mass of my chest works here. And so the way that they hit the ball is this loads, this unloads. So all the energy goes back down. So what do they have to do with their pelvis? Shoot this up and we get in this shape. So we'll have this player that's here, boom, that way. And it just is like, it whacks things out through the hit. Okay, now you can stay pretty much posterior chain dominant throughout the entirety of your swing, as long as we're maintaining this like certain amount of hip flexion that we have. Like right now, if I were setting up and you're my target, and be right in here. And see how I have some amount of posterior chain engagement here. The pelvis is back behind me. My rib cage falls forward. So look at my trunk here. Look at where my midline is. Remember this general shape. So if I'm here and I go backswing, look at this general shape. This looks super similar to where I was here. Okay, same thing going the other way. Boom. See this trunk. So all I'm doing is I'm rotating and maintaining hip flexion here on both sides. Boom. But look at all the lateral movement in my head. Look at the lateral movement in my pelvis. Hardly anything. This is staying underneath, while this is the main rotator and lateral mover. So when I'm doing that, I still have posterior chain. See how like this tissue has to engage to keep me from falling on my face this way. And same thing here. All right, so when we're looking at just general looks of golf swings that I prefer, we've got this look where we're turning appropriately, still posterior chain engagement, still have this pelvic flexion. I've turned here, I have some amount of lateral movement in my head and in my rib cage, and I can spin this golf club up, there's backswing. Now, as I start to go the other way, I'm gonna keep this same posterior chain by moving this laterally, keeping this in flexion. I'm also obviously gonna turn, but while I'm doing so, this club is gonna work down the coronal plane, and now I'm in here into the head. So the whole look, like continuing to pressure this in while I'm moving the rib cage laterally and rotating it, and then just organizing the golf club relative to that. That's the reason for our like posterior chain preference in our favorite movers, favorite golf swings.
Woo! Yee, 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 yee. All right, let's switch a little gears here. Question about putting.
I saw you go grab this.
Yep. Wanted to show off my old thing.
Yeah.
In the setup, you talk about. Oh, let me note who it is.
Okay.
Damian Quinn.
Nice. What up, D?
In the setup, you talk about shaft lean for the roll, whilst keeping the sternum behind the ball to slightly hit up, but also keeping the line of the butt of the club through the center of the back. How would you keep the sternum behind the ball as the combination of the shaft lean and the line of the butt of the club pushes the sternum over/past the ball?
Okay, so we're talking about two different angles here in this question. I think this is the confusion. So let's talk face on, like what to look at for putting. So in putting, you hear about two variables that you want to be able to manage. There's really a third that's like massively important. So we've got obviously the intended line where I want the golf ball to compress off of. And then the pace that, or pressure that I'm putting into the ball to control pace. But super important to manage the golf ball immediately as it comes off the face. What we want the ball to do, like if this is my direction, I get this ball right here. One, we want it to slightly elevate, but as soon as it elevates, okay, the top portion of the golf ball is going to fall head over tea kettle, like it goes past the bottom portion. So if you think about this, we have the ball elevating but going this way. This is like backspin. So as soon as it hits, it like skids a couple times and then it would start going. If it goes elevation, slightly, tumbling this way, as soon as it hits, it starts to roll. Plus, we don't want the golf ball to like have any sort of spin axis this way. It's like a zero spin axis, so it's not like we're hitting draws or cuts. We're just having that golf ball elevate and fall forward, roll. So to do that, easiest to see from face on. So this is all roll, no line, no pace. Who gives a crud about those things, those items? Number one, want the ball 2 inches in front of sternum. Okay, so I'm not saying like where it is relative to the feet, because sometimes you see players that are a little bit more lead side down, a little more trail side, some are 50-50, but my sternum is in different spots based on that setup, okay? So 2 inches in front of sternum. The reason for that is so the golf club, like when it swings, it's gonna bottom out where my sternum is, and then it'll start to climb. So we want an ascend, bottoms out, then it starts to climb slightly into the golf ball. That's number one. Number two, we want a small amount of lean in the shaft. So if I take the putter grip, move it slightly forward so the putter grip would be right over the top of the golf ball. Now I've got a small amount of lean in the shaft. As long as, and this is the loft on the putter in the first place, My preference is 2.5 degrees of loft on the putter, like normal loft. I'm not saying dynamic loft, like as soon as I do this and return it back to that same point in space, the dynamic loft is different there and lower because of the lean in the shaft than it is here. So, and you can kind of throw corks on this too. You can play with this. Like remember Zach Johnson, that putter like sits way back here. Like guarantee Zach has like 0, maybe even negative actual loft on his ear looking this way. Okay, now if we think about just like what happens in the dynamics of this is like this is a super funny term. Like remember back in the day, it was like you hit down on the golf ball to make it go up. No, you hit down to make the ball go down. You hit up to make the ball go up. Physics, okay? So like when Mayo's talking about like spin loft, there's spin loft on every single club that you have. Spin loft is the dynamic loft, the combo of the dynamic loft of the club and the AOA. So the more that this increases, the more backspin you have on the club. Now, what we're doing in putting is we're actually going the opposite slightly. Okay, so the actual loft on the putter, if I go 2.5 degrees right here and lean that thing forward, I have 1, maybe 0.5 degree of dynamic loft, actual loft at the strike of the golf ball. Once I hit it, it would have like half a degree of loft. Well, what if I'm up on it 1 degree? I'm hitting up, so it makes the ball want to elevate. But I have, the math equation is pretty easy. 0.5 degree of true loft, while at the same time, up on it 1 degree, we're minus 0.5 in the spin loft. Now it's tumbling. It wants to elevate the golf ball, but roll it immediately, which is perfect. So if I have a putt that's into the grain on Bermuda, or I have a putt that's down grain on Bermuda, I'm gonna have the golf ball respond in a very similar way. But think about if I have the ball going elevate and backspin into the grain on Bermuda, you're never gonna be able to control pace there at all, because it's just gonna get chewed up immediately, compared if it lands on down grain Bermuda, it'll just chase off and run out. So it's the most like, one of the most important pieces to putting is, can I truly roll the golf ball appropriately right off the blade? That's why it's rule number 1. We talk about putting with all of our kids. You wanna roll the golf ball, number 1, down your intended line, number 2, the distance of the hole. The first 2 we can just kind of knock out and set up, and then we can train players on how to create appropriate pressure on the golf ball to control pace. You do all the 3 of those things well, dude, you're freaking, you're gonna hoop some putts, man, I tell you. Okay, so that's number 1. Now, down the line, when we're looking on this angle, what I prefer players to look like is we've got some amount of sit here. The L spine and early thoracic spine are fairly vertical. So in essence, I'm not just hinging over here. I'm going little sit, this stays tall. And then right here, like in my xiphoid process, or like in the sternum, like right in this area, I'm gonna go ahead and start to round over in here. Let's see how this stays tall. And now what I've got is right through the middle of my thoracic. Okay, so like T5, T7, somewhere in there, like right in kind of my breast line as this rounds over. That position of my spine and the shaft's angle should be perpendicular to one another. And the reason for that is now, like in this space, like notice again, if we bring up transverse plane, my C-spine is pretty flat and level to the ground, so my eyes can look straight down on the ball. I want my eye sockets going, whoom, down, so they're not up in here. Now I can't see the ball. This is my field of vision. I need my field of vision here. Okay, well, the L spine stays generally tall. So just mapping this won't actually be the case. But if I have a, relative to the ground, 90-degree L spine, so it's straight up, and then in my T spine, because my eyes are straight down, this is 0 degrees, it's level with the ground. Between that should be pretty darn close to the shaft's plane here, like perpendicular to it. And the reason is, now we're talking about intended line. So if I'm right in here and I just go extension and flexion in the hands, the face still stays square to the path. And the path is totally indicative, totally set by the shaft's plane here. It's illegal to have a golf club that's straight up and down 90 degrees. Can't have a golf club there, and I can't remember the USGA rules on like how much you can go this way, but there's a range in the golf club set properly. If you just swing it to and fro, it would just stay square to the target the entire time, and they're deeming that against the rules. Got to make it harder for you. So point is, if I'm right in here, and I've got, we could even do this like 90 degrees, so it's right in here, and I swing this thing, it stays square to the path. See how now its leading edge is here. I'm 90 degrees off of where I want the golf ball to go. So this would be square to that path. This would be square to the path. But look, now the face stays square to that target along with the path in that kind of a map. So we have some amount of angle here. And so if I'm in here and I go extension flexion, it stays square to the path, not square to the target. Okay. Or if I go right in here in thoracic, because this pitch is perpendicular to the shaft, I'm always going to have like a stable face relative to the target there. No matter if I use more hands or if I'm more in my thoracic, I'm still going to get the golf ball started off on the intended line. So it's a long answer to this question because I think the confusion is like we're not seeing things in this 3D space like we should for that question. But one question is relative to the start line and the other question is relative to the golf ball's roll. Hopefully that generally like makes some amount of sense there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yay.
All right. This is kind of an interesting one.
All right. Maybe one or two more, huh?
Yes, sir. All right. Ed.
What up, Ed?
Ed Poker. What's the how do I?
Is this a last name?
I'm gonna butcher this last name.
Please
Ed
try.
Poker.
Please try it.
Boka Brodsky.
With a P or a B?
Polka Brodsky.
Polka Brodsky. That's a
I am
dope
so
name.
sorry if I butchered
Mine's
that.
so lame. Riley Andrews. It's the freaking whitest guy name ever.
All right. So Ed is asking. The X Factor site his videos explain the causes and remedies for fat and thin shots. How about shots off the toe and the heel?
Great. Great. So there's lots of ways that this generally happens, but this is always kind of a fun one. All right, so if I set up to the golf ball, and relative to this setup position, if I go into extension, hip extension versus hip flexion, what I'd love you to think about before I give you the answer here is if I go into hip extension, do you think I'm going to toe it or heel it with this map? Compared to if I go into more flexion state here, do you think I'm going to toe it or heel it here? Now, what most people say is if I go into more hip flexion here, I'm going to have a tendency to toe it. If I go into more extension, excuse me, did I say extension or flexion? If I go into more flexion here, I'm going to have a tendency to toe it. If I go into more extension here, I'm going to have a tendency to heel it. It's the opposite. Because it's relative, like your arms attach into your rib cage, like up in here, not into here, like no duh. So if I move this out, my rib cage has to go the other way. So this gets further away from the ball, toe, toe, heel. Okay, so this is why, again, like if we swing it up here to the top and I go into more extension, it rises this. I have to lower the arms, but it's really difficult to get to that ball. So I'll hit like tumble toe shots for the most part. Okay, and if we're going, if we have like these players that are like great droppers, but now they just fire the arms across, oftentimes they'll hit it like we'll get some hosels every once in a while. It's, to be honest, I kind of like deem that as generally a kind of a good sign. Okay, so one map to get it more like leveled out and squared up, okay, where I'm hitting it out of the middle of the face. If I drop, okay, so as I'm going here, and now I start to pivot, but really from this trail hip. So if I'm pivoting here, look at what it does to where the golf club moves relative to the golf ball. So watch my head as well, whoosh. So we actually stay away from this space, and it's easy to get right in there. So you could practice this super easy where you're going drop, curve. If you did them both at the same time, that golf club would just stay right in the middle of the face and I'm right in here. So that's the point that I want to work into. Now, that's a way to kind of like chew on it a little bit. My favorite way, and credit to Luke Brackey for this term, he calls this trunk balance, which is like if I set up here, okay, and I don't have like arms or a club, I can have an athletic awareness of where my sternum is at this point right here, because my sternum's facing the golf ball, this distance away. So the ball to my trunk, it's a certain distance. We could get a ruler out and go, oh, it's 36 inches. I don't care, like it's this far, okay? Now, if I drop, I want to keep this distance the same. If I drop and do this, pretty easy to see, I get too close to it. If I drop and do this, or if I go extension, now I'm further away. So if I'm dropping a bit, but see how like all I'm doing is I'm pitching this angle this way, but I stay the same distance away, that's a really cool way to know, like if I have trunk stability, or trunk balance here throughout the entirety of my swing, if I go turn, 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 now the lead side ribs should be the same distance as where I started from the golf ball to my sternum. And same thing as I work through it. Now my trail side ribs should be the same distance. So it's just an athletic trait or athletic awareness of like trunk balance is just, can I keep the trunk the same distance away from the golf ball during the entirety of the swing? And you'll start to really identify where that golf ball is. And you'll start to go, okay, well, if I heel it, I'm too close to it, shoots the golf club out. If I toe it, I'm too far away from it, and now I can't get it out into the meat of the face. Hopefully that makes sense.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get another one. I think we got two more good ones that won't take too much more time.
Sweet.
One we'll end with that'll be good for everybody.
Nice.
All right, this is from Gene Sorensen.
What up, Gene?
In some videos you talk about bouncing between left and right thoracic bends. Is this primarily in the feet using ground pressure or with the shoulders like the backwards rolling in the PVC pipe demo?
Yeah, so it's not in the feet at all, really. And ground force reactions, like, I think in 12 years of coaching full time, I've said like jump to 2 players ever. Mm-hmm. So it's like super rare. So I can like pretty darn near guarantee that you don't need to like create pressures in the ground like actively here. Okay, so it's all spirals are what create these bends. Now, to kind of like flash through this kind of quickly, you have 3 different types of ribs. You have floating ribs, lower ribs, upper ribs. The upper ribs are designed to accordion. Okay, so I'm right in here. Okay, part of the PVC pipe look when we're doing that like little swimmy drill or boat drill, it's really easy for players to start to look like this. And this is all L spine bend. Like you can see, I just rock in here and you can see where the pivot is. It's like right in my navel. Compared to if I'm up in here, you can see how the bends are like much higher. They're like up in my breast line and up into my neck. Okay, so what I like to see, like the preferred map, is because of the spiral tissue, like going from in this case my lead hip under my trail armpit. If I elongate this, I'm right in here. Now, you'll notice a couple things that I do immediately because of this. I move somewhat lateral, but look at the bend, and you'll feel it right in your armpit, right here, right in the upper ribs. Like, boom, fall here. Now, I have laterally moved right and gone into lead bend. So if I do this, I've laterally moved left and gone into lead bend. Or this. This is just teeter-totter mode. This is super shit, okay? So if I go here, because of spiral movement, awesome. Lead side bend, moved laterally. Now what if I go the other way? Lateral here, boom. See, all this tissue now is elongated. Trail bend, but moved left. So lateral movement left, right bend. Okay, so when you're doing boat drill is here. Like you could do this, I like players to do this seated as well. So now your like L spine is stable, legs are underneath you, so I can't move my pelvis around at all. So if I go here, we used to call this rib sway a lot. People kind of fricked up rib sway, so we got away from the terminology. But let's say that I'm going right in here. This is like boat drill because I have this oar outside kind of going under. So this would be like reverse locomotion. But when I'm doing this, see my lateral? And now I'm going under to get here, under to get here. Boom. This is appropriate boat drill. See where my head's going? Like, number one, if I'm going right, I should be going into left bend. As I go left, I should be going into right bend. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. See that transition? Right in here. And see where that golf club would move? It'd move it behind me. There's the shallower. Boom. But I've done two things. I've got the golf club working behind me as I'm moving left. So if I'm in here, for me as a right-handed player, moved left, I own the ball, meaning like my bottom out is good because I have my center of mass far enough forward, and the club's deep enough so now I can just turn through there. Whereas boat drill this way, see this? Like immediately it's like, oh dude, like clunk out freaking lumberjack mode, right? But look at I'm going right, moved right and right bend. Moved left, left bend. It's the opposite of that. Boom. See the difference there? So that's the way to play with boat drill, and you can do it slowly. If I move right, I'm going in lead bend. If I move left, I'm going in right bend. That's the play.
Beautiful.
Dope.
Over-unders, baby.
Okay, last one for today.
Last one. That kind of answered the other one that I picked. So,
All right.
Let's go. Ooh. I'm not sure how to question that one.
It's like Jeopardy.
It's like
I
think we've touched on this one. I think we can make this one relatively quick and informative.
Cool.
Can you talk about release, mainly the supination part coming into the ball?
Yeah. So two types of releases, active release and passive release. Okay, so big thing to just be aware of, we need some amount of extension here to be able to perform this. So you can go to pretty much full capacity within range. You're not like trying to like go nutso here, but just like boom, there's the extension. So if I wave here, this is supination. Okay, this is supination, but if I see how like both the ulna and the radius, whoosh, 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 they're like rotating over the top of each other, that's like pronation to supination. But if I do this and I do the same thing, see how the ulna and the radius rotate over. So it looks different, but it's just because I'm an extension. Well, what this does is it actively moves the club down the coronal plane. As what I've done now is I've got the club down there. See how I got the club head down, like now it's to the ball. So if I were to turn here, I still have this extension, but the turn is going to make the club shoot out. Now I've got an extension to flexion, passive release because of my rotation. That's angular force. So if I go turn, goes up sagittal, I have this extension here. There's the coronal active release. I'm actively moving the club over there as I turn. So now it's in here. If I kept turning, just continue to turn, I'm going from extension to flexion, and that's the passive release. So, and you can kind of throw it if you want to. Now I'm saying passive because what should happen, it's my favorite way of just showing angular force. If I just start turning here, see that club gets shot out perpendicular away from my trunk, that's angular force. That's what's going to be this like extension to flexion hit. So I'm going up here, actively supinating this to get this under as I continue to turn. There's the passive release. So we're here, there. And you'll see the golf club, like, I'll stop up here at finish. We're here, there. See how now, like this is a flexion state? That's the unload. This would be loaded. So I'm going there, 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 there. This all keeps the load. See how I stay in extension, but I'm supinating. There's coronal. So if I had turned here and the golf club unloads, there's the passive release this way. Okay, so I just like you. I mean, you can hit these like little chippers where we're here, there. Just pitching them out there, just playing with both releases. Active release is the coronal plane hit, okay, or coronal plane release, supination here. The passive release is the angular force that's created because of continued rotation from the trunk through the hit. That's what shoots the golf club out through the strike. Boom,
Thumpers.
sucker!
Thumpers.
Okay, nice. Yes, hit some thumpers. Now we know what it
Now
means.
we know what it means.
Okay, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. This will be posted later on X Factor Golf, our online platform, as well as YouTube. If you're not aware of our online platform, I really encourage you to go to xfactorgolf.com, check it out. If you have questions on it, let us know. We'll be happier than heck to talk you through it. Thanks so much. Hit them great. Let's go, J-Bone.